and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Lou. Good to have you guys. In this podcast, we talk about how Taoist thought and Taoist principles relate to our recovery and ultimately relate to life. Because what I found was recovery is not separate from life. Recovery was the doorway that brought spiritual living, spiritual principles into the rest of my life. Because once I saw that surrender worked with my alcoholism, I could see how living a life of surrender could work with other things as well. And it's not that we think that our willpower is of no use or that we have no willpower. It's how we use our willpower. I used to use my willpower to fight something that I was not capable of fighting. I can't go out there and push my car up a hill, no matter how much I try. But I can get in the car and drive it up the hill. That's my willpower used to what it can be. If I want to get to the hill in the car, I don't get out there and try to push it up the hill. I get in it and drive it. My will is to drive instead of try to push. I know that's simple, but that's really it. So my life is figuring out what I ride on or where I stand or what my actions are that actually are within my ability, not trying to do something I'm not equipped to do. And most of my actions are in the area of how do I surrender and my willpower to surrender rather than my willpower to push and move things that I'm incapable of doing. Okay, let's get on to, two things before we get to our story, The Owl and the Phoenix on page 95 in Thomas Merton's interpretation of the Chuang Tzu. I do want to talk about a benefit resource for you at buddyc.org. Today's resource is transitionsdaily.org. There's a link there at BuddyC. Transitions is a daily email. It's a combination of daily email, a podcast with someone around the world in AA that reads the daily email, no commentary, and a private Facebook group to discuss if that's something you want to join. It's a combination of those three. It is an online group of AA with a AA number, legacy number, those things, and makes regular contributions to AA. Actually, I was looking at their finances, which you can see at the bottom of any page at transitionsdaily.org. And they send $1,500 to $2,000 every quarter to AA World Services. So they're doing what we're told to do in AA. It's a daily email that has most, if not all, of the daily AA readings, 24 hours a day as Bill sees it, daily reflections, quote of the day, all these things there. It's got a acronym of the day, which I think is pretty cheesy most of the time, but they've got all kinds of stuff there for everyone. And it goes out now to over 24,000, I think. Folks are at it every day. As a matter of fact, if you're on the email list, we've had issues with deliverability. I work with them and help them with some things. And one thing I'm helping them with is migrating to a new list. So we're using a new provider, which hopefully will help with that. So if you've struggled with that, if you're on the list, just have some patience with us. And actually, I'm in the process now of migrating everyone to the new list. Other than we have a Google group too. Folks on the Google group will stay there, but all the new list people, which is 9,000, over 8,000, I'm migrating to the new list. So your deliverability should be much better in the next few days. So I know we have folks here that get that. So I wanted to make sure y'all knew that if you'd struggled with it. The other thing I want to talk about is, you can sign up for the email at transitionsdaily.org, or I have a link at Buddy C under resources at buddyc.org. That list is private. It's never marketed to, it's not sold, any of those things. And Transitions has been offered a lot of money for their email list. And it's an AA group, and we don't sell things in AA. Not like that. Don't take advantage of members. It's totally private and will remain private. I wanted to talk about a synchronistic moment. We have these happen all the time, whether we realize it or not. And I want to talk about a very simple one, which happens to me quite often. I meet with sponsees during the week, different times, different days. It happened again a couple of weeks ago. I had something come up that I needed to do at a time and day that I normally met with a sponsee. And lo and behold, the sponsee messaged me and says, "Hey, I can't meet today." Before I even contacted them and said, "Hey, I can't meet with you today." It just fell in place. And that happens quite often. And I'm amazed when it does, when it's not a normal thing for this guy to drop. And he said, "Hey, I can't meet today. I've got this and this." I'm like, "Okay, we'll meet another time." I didn't mention I couldn't meet either, but yeah, I said, "Okay." And it just kind of flowed and happened. And how do those things go about? I quit trying to understand it and just appreciate, just show gratitude. It's not always the case, but it happens very often, very often. Okay, let's get on to our story today. The Owl and Phoenix. Lou, you going to read that for us, sir?
Yeah, I'll read that, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Chuang Tzu was prime minister of Liang. He had what he believed to be inside information that Chuang Tzu coveted his post and was intriguing to supplant him. In fact, when Chuang came to visit Liang, the prime minister sent out the police to apprehend him. The police searched for him 3 days and 3 nights, but meanwhile, Chuang presented himself before Chuang Tzu of his own accord and said, "Have you heard about the bird that lives in the south, the phoenix that never grows old? This undying phoenix rises out of the South Sea and flies to the sea of the north, never alighting except on certain sacred trees. He will touch no food, but the most exquisite rare fruit, drinks only from the cleanest springs. Once, an owl chewing a dead rat, already half decayed, saw the phoenix fly over, looked up, and screeched with alarm, clutching the rat to himself in fear and dismay. 'Why are you so frantic, clinging to your ministry and screeching at me in dismay?'"
Thank you, Lou. So we have the prime minister, and the prime minister had what he believed to be perception, inside information about Chuang Tzu, that Chuang Tzu wanted his post, wanted to become prime minister, and was figuring out how to supplant him. So the prime minister was so convinced of this that when Chuang Tzu came to visit the prime minister, the prime minister sent out the police to apprehend him. Okay, so the prime minister was going to arrest him, and the police looked for him for 3 days and nights. And meanwhile, Chuang Tzu presented himself to the prime minister. So he eluded the police and went straight to the prime minister and presented himself of his own accord. He wasn't made to appear. He wasn't arrested. He went on his own, and he told the prime minister a story. It was a phoenix that lived in the south, that never grows old, that he rises from the South Sea and flies. He's flying to the north, so he's flying across country from south to north. He never lands except on certain sacred trees, and he touches no food but exquisite rare fruit, drinks only from the clear springs. And an owl saw him traveling overhead, and the owl was chewing a dead rat that was half decayed. And the owl screeched, clutching the rat in fear. Oh, there we go. Fear and dismay. And Chuang Tzu tells the prime minister, why are you so frantic clinging to your ministry and screeching at me in dismay? So dismay would be distress, consternation, and distress typically that is caused by something unexpected. That's the definition of dismay. So the prime minister's in fear. Fear again. As a result of fear, he does what we call in recovery contempt prior to investigation. He sees Chuang Tzu through a lens of fear. And he thinks what he has, it's so important to him to be prime minister. He thinks everyone would like to have that job. Ego, all the other results of, all the other fruits of fear. How we can build ourselves up to be so special and start believing our own BS. Brian?
I was just thinking about that legend in my own mind.
Yes.
That quote. That's me. That facade.
Think about how often I have inside information in my own head that I think is reliable, but is not reliable at all because it's fear-based. And I'm anticipating something that's going to happen that is a threat to me, when really it may be unpleasant, but oftentimes it leads to some good things. And I've wondered several times past in my life what would have happened if I hadn't been afraid and just opted for this in the first time instead of trying to fight it off until I realized it was, or found out through time that it was the right thing for me. Often the little things that seem like disappointments, like there's jobs or something, end up being something that's important later on in what you do in life, whether it's jobs or somebody you meet or something like that. It might seem like a disappointment, but then it turns into being just the right step that you needed. And it seems like the prime minister there was off on that and pretty fearful and anticipatory fear of something that was no threat to him.
It seems like for me, Lou, that when I think I miss it, that situations align either to revisit that or something different that would help in that same direction. I don't think it's that we have one opportunity for something, for most things, and that's over. Life is over if there was one person to marry or there was one this, one that, whatever the case. I can see how things line back up as I go with life, because if it were that way, none of us would be where we were supposed to be, because it's just human nature to miss those things.
I think of a time when I had a job that I kind of thought was beneath me, beneath my educational level. And I left that job for another job. And then a really good job came along that I stuck with for 40 years, type of work that I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't had that one that was beneath me. It introduced me to working with certain circumstances that if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have gotten, which was very profitable and meaningful to me.
We just never know where our life is going to lead, and thinking that we do, that stands in my way more than helps me a lot of times. It keeps me from being open-minded. That open-mindedness, the more I walk this path, seems to be one of the most important aspects. I never would have thought that years ago. I thought I would know more. I thought I would be less open-minded because I would know exactly what to do. Okay. But it seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be that I become more open-minded because a lot of times what I'm looking for comes from within you rather than within me. I hear it. Now, sometimes it does come within me, but I've got to be open to all voices that are coming at me. Brian?
Buddy, I was just thinking I've got a friend of mine that's got a lot of long-term sobriety in a program, and he's talked about that it took every bump in the road to bring me to this point. And I was reflecting on that this morning, that phrase, because I had to have a lot of damn bumps in the road. And then, my ego told me, well, I just need to double down and do better. And things didn't get better until I surrendered, and realized that it was that Mr. Magoo that Brian's the problem in Brian's life. And I don't say that from a shaming point, but, my ego, until I was willing to surrender that, accept what is, and pause and reflect on things and kind of let the answer come to me on things that I perceived that were bad. There's times that it works out and it's not bad. Lou said.
Back to my car analogy this morning. It's not your momentum or force that's moving the car.
Mm-mm.
I have to stop trying to push it entirely and decide to use the force that's available. And the only way I can do that is by surrendering to pushing the car. It's not that I drive it and stand outside trying to push it at the same time. Keep a foot out the door and keep trying to push it while I'm in it. That's what I did for 5 years in recovery. I was not surrendering. I was still trying to push with force. I was kind of inside. I was half inside. I had one cheek inside, one out, trying to push, Didn't work. I want to talk about this from two perspectives. I want to talk about this from the Prime Minister and from Chuang Tzu. So on the Prime Minister side, and we always talk about personal application. For the Prime Minister, we've got all of the contempt, prior to investigation, fear, living in fear. His perception was skewed because of his fear. Back to what my friend Karen Casey says, can I see this differently? And am I really seeing this the way it is? Because I do judge others by their actions, and I judge myself by my intentions, not my actions. So I could take the same action that someone else would see as being a particular way, but I didn't intend, I don't judge myself by that. So I've got to take that in consideration. Oh, Chuang Tzu's coming to visit me. He must want my job. Maybe some of his wise men that the minister had wanted to make themselves more important. So maybe they were feeding these lies or these misperceptions to the Prime Minister, probably because they would like the Prime Minister's job. So you gotta watch you gotta be careful what you listen to. Doesn't mean you don't listen, but you got to be cautious of that too. You have to be open, but you have to be cautious as to what you take as fact. A couple of things that helped me with that. One thing, try to put myself in their situation. I try to really communicate with them to see really what's going on here. And 99 times out of 100, it's not the way that I'm seeing it. That's why judgment is so dangerous. Judgment for me is doing what the Prime Minister did. I don't think it's judgment when I actually discuss something with someone. That's not judgment. Judgment is me coming to those decisions based on partial knowledge or what I believe rather than what maybe actually is. I don't know. I mean, I do have to make value judgments. It's not that I never make decisions or determine something's a good course or not. But I have to look at decisions I make. Am I making this decision because of fear? Because I have those two bases to live from. Fear-based living or compassionate-based living. Those are really my two. I'm not 100% on either one, but hopefully I'm moving more toward the compassion-based decision. So is this decision helpful? Or is this decision all about me? Is this, what's going to be the effects of this decision? Do I explain this decision with I, me, or my? That gives me a good indication of where that's coming from. And one thing that really helps is journaling, writing down everything, or taking some notes and just journaling about something you're thinking of doing and see what comes from that and see how you actually write that out. Tells me a lot. And what the prime minister's ultimately told is that what he has is not something that Chuang Tzu is interested in. And the prime minister's perception is based on fear and being afraid of what he has being taken. Goes back to was it the spiritual ACIM? Is that it? It's step 7 in the 12 and 12 it's not the spiritual ACIM, it's the chief activator of our defects, has been self-centered fear, primarily fear that we would lose something that we already possessed or would fail to get something we demanded. And the minister was all about fear, and what he thought was so important to Chuang Tzu was not. It was decay and something he wasn't even interested in at all. Now, let's shift to Chuang Tzu. What is Chuang Tzu's attitude about this? It looks like he knew that's what the prime minister thought, and that may be the reason he even went to the city. We really don't know. But that would make sense that he wanted to address this. So in life, if I know a situation's coming up, rather than what I like to do is avoid, rather than address things head on. I'll wait to pay bills to the very last minute, even though I may have the money in the bank to pay it. And I've been noticing lately that that's probably a fear of financial insecurity, not wanting to let my money go. When I got to pay it anyway. Just go ahead and pay it instead of thinking about it for a week before I do. Okay, Chuang Tzu saw this situation, so he said, I'll go visit the prime minister. Take care of this. I'm going to assume that's the reason he was there. Is there anything, am I missing something, guys? Does he say anything different? I don't think so. So Chuang Tzu was going directly to the prime minister. Lou, you have something?
I think it's a little later on, buddy. I can wait.
Okay. All right. So what Chuang Tzu does, it looks like he avoids either he avoids the police or the police are just looking in the wrong place for him. Who knows? But it looks like he avoids the police because he wants to address this himself. But it doesn't look like he went directly to the prime minister, because why would the police be looking 3 days if that was the case? So I don't know if maybe we could take from that Chuang Tzu was waiting on the right time, but he was still going to address it. That could be it. I don't know. But he avoided the police and he went of his own accord.
Yeah, but it seemed to me Chuang Tzu wasn't going to play that game. He wasn't going to get caught up in the blame game and not move when the time wasn't right to move. And what he did it directly. He showed up and he kind of used a gentle way at first, telling the story, the metaphor. Wasn't confrontational or getting into a back and forth on it until he kind of had, in a kind of a gentle way, laid out his perspective on it. Then he asked a direct question. He wasn't avoiding the question, but he was gentle in setting the stage so that the prime minister would have some understanding of where he was coming from. So it's kind of a combination of compassion but directness. Seemed to me that's the way it was. But he wasn't going to play the game. He didn't play get caught up in it seeming like he was there reluctantly or had been needing to be brought in because he wasn't an enemy.
He didn't attack, nor did he defend.
Why are you mad at me?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to you and you're sending the cops after me.
Yeah. That goes back to living this way of life does not mean that we're a pushover.
He wasn't the victim or the victor.
Yes.
It wasn't that kind of it wasn't competition.
He could have been.
Oh yeah, he could have been the Phoenix.
Yeah.
Certainly had it within him. But have you been in that situation, buddy and Brian? I think probably you have, where somebody has decided that you're a threat to them when you had no inclination of being a threat to them. But for some reason, they have decided that somehow you're an enemy or someone to not trust without any cause, other than maybe some their own fear, misplaced jealousy. I can think of a couple of examples of that where people misread something I did in a negative way when there was no intention that it be that way. Other people didn't think it was that way, but for some reason that person decided that it was out of their own discomfort or fear, I assume. Closest I'll ever be to being a Phoenix, probably.
I can relate to that probably the first 10 years of my marriage. And I'm pretty sure my wife would agree with that. You know, we were in a terrible place for a long time, and we would fight about everything, argue about everything, but our usual behavior was to each go to a corner and go to our addictions. And but yeah, and you know, today we've had to do a lot of work on our communication skills. Believe it or not, I didn't have the smoothest delivery, and
Really?
no, it was pretty rough. Bad timing just all around. My delivery was terrible, and because I was coming at fear, you know, I could remember things building up inside, and then it's just like it builds up, on. I'm waiting on the right moment, then I just vomit, for lack of a better term. Funny how we get into these stories and we're like, what the hell is, getting nothing. Then we start getting a little bit of traction.
Like I said, listen to the last 10 minutes and you'll get what it's about.
Yeah.
So am I making decisions out of fear or out of thinking that I'm going to lose something I have or not get something I want? Is that why I'm making this decision? What am I afraid of? If I can get past that, then I might be on the right side of this thing. So came on his own accord. He was not made to be there. He addressed it. And it was time he addressed it head on. He didn't get in a rush. Doesn't look like. He took his time. For me, that would be a pause, just to look and notice and make sure I'm heading in the right direction, but address things, but at the right time. And I'm thinking about Chuang Tzu's goal or motivation in life, or what he valued as important. Our story, the turtle last week, talked about how Chuang Tzu valued his freedom. He didn't value, it's interesting. Last week's story was he was asked to be prime minister. And this week's story is about the prime minister. So maybe this would be the prime minister after him. I don't know. We could maybe formulate that. Oh, Chuang Tzu was offered prime minister and he didn't take it. Maybe he still wants this. And then all the imagination starts. Could be. That would kind of set the story up, because if I'm living in fear, who would not want to be the prime minister? Who would not want to win the lottery? Who would not, whatever you want to put in that box? Well, a lot of people. If you would like to win the lottery, just go and Google people who've won the lottery and read about them a little bit. You may not want to win the lottery after you do that. Most regret winning the lottery if they do, because it goes back to our idea. We wish things were different. And if it was only this, I would be happy. If it was only this. That's not where Chuang Tzu is. And the prime minister may be living in that. He thought everyone wanted what he had. A lot of ego there, a lot of fear. So here we have Chuang Tzu, who's not living in fear. Doesn't look like he's living in ego. His nature is not to want this. As a matter of fact, he looks at it as something not to be wanted. It would be something that's decaying and not pure. And he's found a higher way of living. That's what it looks like to me, because the phoenix only lands on certain sacred trees, only eats food that's exquisite rare fruit, and only drinks the clearest water from the clearest springs. So the phoenix has found a better way of living. So we can be either one. We can be the minister or the phoenix, right? Or the owl and the phoenix, or the minister and Chuang Tzu, ever how you want to say that. Why are you clinging to your ministry and screeching at me in dismay? We don't know what's said after that. I'm sure the Minister responds. I don't know how the minister behaves after that, but it looks like he would know that Chuang Tzu's not after his post, which doesn't make sense to the prime minister, I'm sure, because who wouldn't want to be prime minister? How many people really, though? I quit a long time ago trying to explain or justify how I look at things. I mean, I address issues, but when someone thinks something I do is so unnatural, like if I'm giving money or I'm doing this or I'm doing that, not pursuing the same things they're pursuing.
Buddy, that makes me think of the phoenix, the difference between the phoenix and the prime minister. The phoenix nourishment, what keeps the phoenix healthy is the purest things, the rare things. So the phoenix is feeding itself, its mind, things that are healthy for it, and it's not eating fear, for example, or greed, or hesitation, or dismay, or any of those kinds of things. It's keeping itself fed with the right thing.
Thank you, Lou.
Keep ourselves fed with literature and with meetings.
You know, if I'm lacking spiritually, the first thing I need to do is look and see if I've let up on my spiritual practices. If I have a sponsee that is gotten out of touch, is complacent, which happens to us. I think it happens to everyone I know. You get to a point and you just kind of start coasting for a little while. I'll ask the sponsee, what spoke to you originally? Where do you hear God? In other words, what feeds you spiritually? If it's meetings, go to more meetings. If it's podcasts, listen to more podcasts. Whatever it is that feeds you spiritually, do more of it. If you're in a place of complacency, if you don't know what it is, just do everything. Whatever got you sober in the beginning, just go back to doing it. Brian?
Oh, I was just thinking about what Lou said, being of service. That always works. I know there's that quote in the big book. What is it? Nothing suffices like working with another alcoholic.
Yeah, it works when other actions don't.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
There you have it. The Phoenix had such a higher way of living. It wasn't about actions with the owl or the Phoenix. It's about their way of life, which are two totally different levels. It sounds like the Phoenix was not even aware the owl was afraid. It was up here living, not concerned with that. It was the owl that was looking out at the Phoenix, not the Phoenix looking at the owl. So if we're comparing, maybe we need to revisit where that's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fear talking? Look for dishonesty, resentment, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. Personally, I think that selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment is how is the actions taken from fear.
Mm-hmm.
They're the tools of fear. So if I see myself acting in those ways, there's fear behind that. Because I can't see fear. Fear pops up other ways. You've got all those things produce anger, all the other things that we do. If you kind of dig deep, I can always see fear behind those actions, behind all my defects. And Chuang Tzu was living a way of life that was so far above that. So as we lay down our fears and we work through 4 through 9 and then continue with 10, 11, 12, we start living above those things. It starts small and then it gets to where we don't even realize in the future, or I don't realize at times, that I handled a situation totally different than I would have handled it before.
It's that living life like you wear a loose garment.
Yeah. This was not either the Prime Minister and Chuang Tzu or the owl and the Phoenix. They're not either one two on the same plane of living. They're different planes of living. Lou?
I think I lost what I was going to say, buddy. It's on a different plane.
Thanks, Lou. So can I see this differently? Or my actions, if I think someone's going to take something I have, I need to look at why I'm thinking that. That's the first question I can ask. Well, what's the origin of this? Do I think I'm going to lose something I have or not get something I want? Ooh, what's behind that? There's a better way of living than that. And what I do is what my sponsor would call a mini fourth step. Write it out. Just like we talked about at first about making decisions and writing those things out. When I write something out, it gets out of my head and I can see it more clearly. Even if something I didn't take to my sponsor, when I write it out, if something's eating my lunch, I need to write it out. And once I write it, I can see it more clearly and say, oh, and if I need to, I take it to my sponsor. If not, I have some tools I've learned to use over the years. I can just use those tools. But if I need to, and it keeps at it, I take it to my sponsor because I like being at peace and have joy and being happy. I don't like being miserable and think you won't, clutching what I have.
Heard a guy once, Billy, but he was talking about you got something in your head and you write it and you just release it. It just flows right down your arm and right out onto that paper.
It gets it out of my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It says that
that's a damn dangerous place for me.
We admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Somewhere in that process of writing it out and talking to my sponsor, somewhere in there, I'm admitting it to what is or to God. By writing it out helps me with that and telling it. And I admit it to myself when I write it out. I see it. And part of that is the telling to another person too. All those lines are murky for me, but I know it works. That's all I need to know. I don't have to figure out how or, well, this is this and this is that. Who cares? Whatever I think it is today is going to be different a year from now. I'll let go of having to understand the mechanism behind. I don't have to know how a car runs to drive it. All I need to know is I put the key in and I do what it is to get it started and go. I don't have to know what's connected to this, to all the other parts of how it works. All I need to do is start the car and drive it. I need to know that as far as operating it goes. Some people know nothing about vehicles, which amazes me. They get along just fine driving. I don't have to know how surrender works. I don't have to know how these steps work for them to work for me. I just have to do it. And I get the results of going. I get the same results. That's good, guys. Thank y'all for a good conversation. Anything else to add before we close? Okay, guys, y'all have a great day and continue to have a good holiday season, and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.